Hi, my name is Jeremy Jacob Borey, JJ Borey. I am Jayla Borey's father.
Hi, my name is Maria Borey, and I'm Jayla Borey's mom.
İsmim Maria Andrade Alves Pina.
Meu nome é Alberto Gomes Pina.
Hi, my name is Victoria Pina.
My name is Rogerio Pina.
So I am your typical third, fourth generation American that great-grandparents immigrated here from European nations like Italy and Ireland and England, and just like the Lithuanians and the Polish, and they all came here in the early 1900s, that first wave of immigration that helped build America what it is today.
Nesse Fogo, Cabo Verde, Fontilégio.
I was born in Odessa, Ukraine, which back then was the Soviet Union. It does not exist anymore, but now what is known as Ukraine. And my family decided to immigrate from there in 1990 when the Soviet Union collapsed, and finally people were able to leave to go to other countries. I know that they were thinking about moving possibly to Germany or the US, but those things did not work out. So we ended up moving to Israel when I was less than 1 year old. I was actually exactly 11 months old.
A casa é casa de telha. Ela tem dois quartos cama. 3 bedroom, yeah.
My home there was very different than here. In the city, we mostly lived in apartment buildings, so it was very different than the suburb environment here in the U.S. I remember even just the way we would play with our friends and everything was very different. We would have to, play in the parking lot area under the building, and I would have to go over to the next building and press the intercom and ask my friend to come down and play and everything. I just feel like the feel was very much a city rather than a suburb, which is basically how I've lived ever since I came to the US. I've always been in like a suburb area, so it's a very different feel.
Havia na farm. I grew na farm, my father, minha mãe com minha pai trabalhavam na farm e eat, comer. Comer, eu trabalhava na farm, eu comia na farm. Quando que vem América, acha e América, sabe?
There's a lot of advantages. The disadvantages, I will start with that, is just, like I said, the culture shock for me as a kid. Having to learn a new language, having to kind of learn a whole new life. Even the weather was different. I've never seen snow before. So that was pretty amazing, actually. But then also winter, I've never been through such a brutal winter before. So everything was very different. I think that was the disadvantage for me as a child. But then the advantages there's so many. So many opportunities, and so much that I learned. And also being an immigrant kind of gives you a whole different perspective on life that I think is very, in a way, privileged that other people don't get. Meeting different people from different walks of life, and just, I don't know, getting to know different cultures and such. So I think that's the main advantage for me.
My dad came to America from, my grandparents petitioned him from Cape Verde, and my mother, her uncle petitioned her to come to America.
From Cape Verde Island. Where I live with they call Nuco. And grew up there. I left to America and July 24, 1974.
So my dad's grandfather was the first person to migrate to America. He actually came to America by boat, which took months and months on the ocean. Um, that back then they didn't have airplanes, and that's how you would come to America.
Because I was so afraid to start a family in my country because, sometimes it's very hard to start over there. Yeah, very poor. I don't want to live that kind of life. A lot of people used to live that life because so I always always have my mind on my mind. Well, someday I'll go start a family, but I know I can't start here because you can't hear the island because it'll be so hard for me. So my grandfather came in 1919. When he came in the Mardi Gulf, he said my daughter has 1 year old, born 1 year old, and then later my mother, my grandfather make paperwork, come to Lisbon to make the petition so that my mother can come. So he comes with his husband, and later on in 1973, come my one sister and 3 boys. They come they came in 1973. So I came 1974.
And then he came and settled in the Cape Cod area, where he then worked, and I believe he went out to California and did railroads and did paving.
My great-grandparents from each side that I do know of, Jacob McNamara and Sarah McGuire, came from Ireland to Brooklyn, New York in the early 1900s, where they had my grandfather, Frank McNamara. The other side of the grandparents came from Sicily or Italy in the early 1900s as well to New York, where my grandmother had come from. And then I have another grandfather and grandmother as well. I'm kind of mixed a little bit of everything, whether it's Italian, Irish, French, Canadian, however it may be. They came to Brooklyn, New York.
Ali, também para mim, e vida, e para trabalhar, para ajudar minha família na Cabo Verde.
My mom came to America at, I believe she was around 21 years old. Her uncle petitioned her. She first lived with her aunt, which is my grandmother's sister. She lived there for a couple years. She described it being very difficult because she had left her home life in Cape Verde. She was the first person in her family to come to America, and she really didn't have, she had some support system, but not close family, was more extended family. She met her aunt for the first time when she moved in her house. Her aunt had her family. My mom talked a lot about she felt kind of neglected at sometimes, hungry. Sometimes she said she cried a lot. Not having your mom or dad here and then being with family that you're meeting for the first time, not having that close bond, it's very hard. She didn't know the language, she didn't have any friends, she felt very isolated. Things didn't work out at her aunt's house, that she then moved in with her cousins. And she said it was really hard trying to just kind of, just trying to fit in. They were into, going out and having a good time. And my mom had a lot of responsibility. She was the oldest daughter of my grandparents, and her role was to really work and send money home, because in Cape Verde it's very poor. It's a third world country. So my mom just needed to save and work really hard and send home. So her priorities was very different. So she never really got to live like the so-called her 20s, going out and having a good time. She mostly worked her whole life. So it was really hard. She then found that things didn't work out at her cousin's house. A family friend took her in and loved her, and my mom lived with them for a long time, maybe 10 years, until she then met my dad, and then they got their own place together, and then had me, and then so on and so on.
Deve familja ali ma ka uza muito direito. Bem que é bom na alguém que nunca conhece a minha família, que vem usar bem, se minha mãe com minha pai.
We came here because, well, I didn't really have much of a choice in it. I was a child. But my mom got transferred here for her job. She worked in a tech company that had offices both here and in Israel. And they offered her a work visa as well as a path to get a green card, which, is not very easy to get most of the time. So she took the opportunity. She moved here. She actually moved here first and set everything up, and then had us and my dad move there later. And I think the reason she wanted to move was because of her job, but also because of security for us with everything that was going on in the Middle East and in the country. She wanted to keep us safe.
Nunca tem família ali e estava na de casado, bem a casado com alguém que nunca consegue tomar a família que toma. Yeah, me inclusive com alguém que nunca consegue usar bem, que tomar que tratar bem. Nem trabalhadores trabalho que hoje nunca se sente falta de que gente que usa mal nunca se sente falta rança direito, com 4 filhos, com neto, com bisneto, me fica Deus obrigado.
My great grandmother stayed in Cape Verde. Back then, that generation, only the men would come by ship, and then they would leave their wives and children behind in the islands. The husbands would come and work and then send money back.
My dad was the last of his siblings to come because he was in the army. So he was the last to come, I believe in 1976, 75, one of the two. And when they came, I think he lived in the house the house that my grandfather had for over 50, 60 years. And my mom came, I'm not sure of the word for it, but when someone signs for you to come, is it petition for you to come?
Petition, yeah.
Yeah, they did that, and she ended up coming, staying. That's how she came to America, and then eventually meeting my dad.
I was a tailor. Then I signed for the army. I've been there for 3 years. Then I went back to Fogo. I had 3 years in an island called San Vicente. Then my father make me petition, so I went to Fogo, wait for the number. Then after 6 months, I get my notification to come to Lisbon to get a visa to come to America. So I was very happy. It's very incredible thing that I ever done in my life. It was come to the United States of America. I'm very proud. I have a good life here. I have a wife and 4 kids. and I was very, very happy. And to get my family, that's what I started for my family is in the United States.
Meu trabalho, me pensava na coisa, não fazer cortina. Trabalhar na cortina. Não sabia muito inglês, mas porque eu mostrando que eu queria trabalhar lá, mostrar como a fazer. Não trabalhei uns tempos, depois este pagava pouco, então ganhava e $2,30 por hora. Depois larguei aquele, mas estava num trabalho que ainda ganhava e $2,70. Depois me tornei largar, mas estava num carro que este Londres lisava roupa, lençol, Johnny, estar $3,14, trabalhar lá para 12 anos, depois de 12 anos, trabalhar num carro, trabalhava assembling para o hospital, estar lá e $7,70 por hora de second shift, ainda trabalhava 11 para 7 da manhã, estar com $7,71 que ganhava de third shift. Trabalhava para 24 anos. Não, ele move, ele vai para outro carro, vai para México. Depois o governo põe na escola por 2 anos, depois de 2 anos, e a fim daquela escola, não tinha retire.
And then actually my great-grandfather supposedly rode the ferry as work back and forth from Brooklyn, New York to Staten Island. And eventually my grandfather left the house when he was 14 and joined the Merchant Marines. Both grandfathers were in World War II, one in the Army and one in the Merchant Marines. They both left their houses when they were early. And then eventually made it to Boston, Massachusetts, or just outside of Boston.
Have to have a U.S. citizen. You have to submit paperwork through the U.S. Embassy, and they have to approve the visa for that family member. And it can take up to a 10-year process. If it's a parent petitioning a child that's a minor, it's right away. But if it's a child that's already an adult, it can take up to 10 years.
So the process, I don't remember too many details because I was a kid, but I do remember going to a lot of government buildings. I remember being at the U.S. Embassy a lot in Israel. And also once we came here, I remember going to like offices. And I don't think me and my sister were interviewed because we were too young. But I remember my parents getting interviewed and going through this whole long process. They had to find like so many documents and make copies. I just remember documents everywhere all the time. But finally they got their green cards, and so subsequently we got our green cards as well because we were kids. And that's how we got here.
So I was born in Dorchester, 1979. When I first was born, until my early school year age, I didn't know any English at all. I didn't learn English until I went to preschool, and then I learned, watch TV, watch Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers in the Neighborhood, and that's how I learned English. No one in the household really spoke English. My dad knew a little bit. My mom didn't know at all. But yeah, I learned English. My siblings and I learned while we had to go to school.
So I'm that American mutt you call that kind of grew up here. And then I met my wonderful now wife, Maria, who actually was a first generation. Her family, her parents immigrated here from Cape Verde Islands to America.
I really loved going to school in Randolph. The teachers that I had were all amazing. They knew that English was not my first language, and they knew I wanted to try. So a lot of them took me under their wings. I would go and see them for extra credit. Some of them actually would have lunch with them, because I was always nervous being in large crowds in the cafeteria. So sometimes I remember in high school, specifically, I had my health teacher, Mrs. Chase, never forget her. We would have basically a lunch buddy group, and we would sit in her classroom and have lunch together and talk about life and what she's doing, and would help me out if I had any help, if I needed any help with any assignments. They were all amazing. I had an amazing math teacher, Mrs. Hahn, who I adored, and I mean, I can go on Mr. Pereira, my English teacher. Mr. Giugio also was my English teacher. I really loved school. Was always hard for me, so I needed a lot of extra help. So I had to really work really hard, and those teachers were amazing. They just took me under their wings, and I just kind of had an amazing experience.
I was definitely treated differently. When I first moved here, I came to sixth grade, which is middle school, and middle school kids can be a little brutal sometimes. I mean, there were a lot of differences, school wise, like education wise, the levels were different, and the way the kids treated me wasn't very nice in the beginning. They didn't like outwardly make fun of me or anything, but I knew that they were talking about me. I remember we used to have this thing called AIM, AOL Messenger, which everybody used. And so I remember having a screen name, and I didn't use it very much, but somehow these kids found my screen name. And I remember them just like messaging me kind of messed up things now that I think about it. But I didn't know what they meant back then because I barely spoke English. So I remember that. And then another memory that I have is I was in the cafeteria, which in Israel, our schools did not have cafeterias, by the way. Everybody would just bring lunch from home. Or at some point, you were allowed, when you were older, to go off campus to eat, but there were no cafeterias. So to me, a cafeteria was such a cool concept. I always saw it in the movies. I wanted the tray to walk around, and I just remember thinking it was so cool. And then I sat down with some kids who were on the nicer side. They invited me to sit with them, and I remember I got some French fries. And I don't know if it was just my family, but I didn't eat things with my hands. Like even French fries, I would eat them with a fork. And so I remember this one girl, I even remember her name because I remember this moment. She said to me as I'm eating my French fries, she goes like, "You have to put down the fork, you're in America now." And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know, that memory is always stuck in my head. So there was a lot of culture shock for me when I got here. Definitely, people were different.
I had an IEP in school, and I had a resource teacher, Mr. Keith, never forget him. And he helped me apply for, I think I applied, I can't, maybe 3 colleges, and I wound up applying. And I was the first person in my family to actually go to college. There was the I Have a Dream Foundation, which was funded, I forgot who funded the program, but it was a program for inner city kids to go to college. I believe it was by George Bush family, and they started this foundation where they wanted inner city kids to go to college. So you could go to any state school, or they'll pay $10,000. It was $10,000 a year, so it comes up to like $40,000 to any school that you want of choice. If it was a state school, it would be free, but if it was a private, you would get the $10,000 every month. And I actually was in that class that was nominated. So at a very young age, I think I was 4th grade or 5th grade, I knew that I had the opportunity to go to college, even if my parents couldn't afford it, because I had the I Have a Dream scholarship award. So when it was time for me to go to college, it was no brainer. So Mr. Keefe was like, we're gonna apply for private schools. Like, he knew that I needed to be in a smaller school setting. So I applied to LaSalle College. I wound up getting in, and I went there for 4 years, and I graduated from there um, with a major in psychology with a minor in early education. And then I worked. I worked at a homeless shelter, Horizons Initiative. It was a program where it provided families that are living in shelters free daycare. So I worked in the daycare setting as a preschool teacher. I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I decided that I wanted to get my master's in social work. I wound up applying and getting into BC, and I did 2 years at BC with my social work, and got my social work license degree, and yeah, it was a great experience.
But we met, and I remember her saying to me, that she came from Cape Verdean background, and I had no idea what that was, to be honest with you. I was living out in Worcester at the time, and Cape Verdeans really didn't live out there. And what I realized after is that they lived predominantly in the Boston, Brockton, Providence area, and that's where they immigrated to, just like most different immigrant populations end up in different regions in different parts of the U.S. When I met her, to me, she was just American, just like me and everybody else. Then I met her parents, and at first, I wasn't really sure what to expect or what to get out of it. And I realized quickly her father was very old school, and he knew how to put the hammer down. So I was a little nervous when I met them, but long story short, everything worked out great. So Vovo and Papi, which is your grandparents, my wife Maria's parents, I was really impressed because they came here in the 1970s. I always asked a lot of questions from them. And even their parents were alive and got to know how they came to America. But they came here pretty much with nothing. And they worked hard, and they invested in their children. And, I met my wife Maria, and I can now say that not only is she a college graduate, but she has a master's degree, and that's first generation American. My wife didn't know English till she started school. Your mom, right? So to say the least, them coming here in the 1970s, working hard, doing everything for the next generation, and that's what most immigrants, when they come here, that's what the first wave of my great-grandparents, that was, everybody left their country for a specific reason, for a better life, for the future, for their kids, for the next generation. And that really impressed me a lot.
So I think, there's a lot of differences. Everything that goes on in the Middle East can be very scary if you think about it. A lot of war, a lot of just very bad situations, which I won't go into them, but I think living here, especially for my family, was just a lot of peace of mind, knowing that we're safe, knowing that me and my sister were not going to go into the army. My sister was supposed to go. She was already 16 or about to turn 16 when we moved here, which is when you get your first draft letter, it's called. And I think the reason they moved us away so quickly is because once you get your first draft letter, it's a little bit harder to leave. So they wanted to do it before that happened. So I think the main difference is just the safety and the peace of mind. On a smaller scale, everything's different, like the neighborhoods, the people, the customs. I remember we would walk around and people were always like smiling at us, and I know that sounds weird, but like we weren't used to everybody just smiling and saying hi, like just walking around. Like, we would walk around a pond in Wakefield, and everyone would just say hi, and we were like, oh, like we're not used to that. That's not the culture, you know. So yeah, a lot of things were a culture shock, but also very nice. One funny story that I can tell you is that we weren't used to wreaths on doors during Christmas. Didn't really know about that tradition, to be honest. And in from what my family knew, when you put a wreath on a door, it means that someone passed away. So like I remember we were walking around during I think the first Christmas we were here, and my mom was just like, "What is going on? Like like did something like some catastrophe happen or something?" So yeah, there was a lot of funny moments like that, learning things.
Honestly, as a kid, when you have like two older brothers and an older sister, it's pretty fun because you always have someone to play with or bother. But you know, now that I'm a father, I notice a lot of things were a little off. You know, no one was ever around, but mostly, you know, my grandmother, you know, PP, she would be around. She would watch us, but you know, let us break all the rules. But they wasn't. It was pretty quiet, you know. We'd get in a little trouble here and there, but it was pretty good. You know, it's a little rough sometimes.
It was not the typical household. My parents worked a lot. We were, we had extended family that lived around the neighborhood, that lived in the same apartment complex. They would watch us a lot. We rarely saw my parents, but yeah, they worked a lot. They had to work 2-3 jobs to support family members and us, and they wanted to build a future, so they had to work really hard. So we got to spend time on Sundays where we went to church together. That was our family bonding time, and my dad would take us to the park. We had one bike. We would share all three siblings would share the same bike. But yeah, we had a lot of cool family. We had some family cousins who would give us you know, their toys that they outgrew or clothes they outgrew, and we had a lot of hand-me-downs.
They were working all the time, and yeah, they was working. My mom used to work 2 jobs, sometimes do a third one for part-time. Papi had his own business because you know, he never wanted to work for somebody, so he did carpeting. He was a carpenter, not a carpenter. He's a carpenter, and you know, he got to the point where he ended up having 3 houses at one point, fixing them. Some of them had no pipes, no toiletry, no nothing, no bathrooms. They started from scratch sometimes. So didn't really get to see them much.
Vamos bem de Cabo Verde e pouco entrei. Minha família poa, panjura minha família. Bem, tudo minha família, bem trabalhadores, trabalho, para pôr tudo minha família ali. Obrigado, Deus, tudo minha família na pé, minha pé.
So my mom and dad got their first apartment probably in late 1978. They worked really hard. My dad was working at the factory. He got really sick at one point. He had to take time off from work. So my mom worked 2 jobs to support myself and my dad. And then when my dad got better, he decided to maybe look into real estate and start buying houses with my mom's help. They bought their first 3-family house in Dorchester. They worked really hard and saved. My dad was very supportive with my mom, where everything they had extra, they would send home back to my mom's family, because my mom's mom and dad was still in Cape Verde, and also all her siblings were all her six siblings were all, or 5 siblings were all in Cape Verde. So they kind of worked really hard as a team. They built their family. My brother was born, then my other brother was born, then my baby brother was born. But my mom had saved enough money at one point to petition her brother. He was the first one that she petitioned. It took about 10 years. He then came and lived with us at our house. And my dad was very supportive in helping my mom's family trying to migrate back to America, because my dad knew how important family was. My dad had a good experience because all his family was there. He was the last one to come. But my mom she had a big responsibility to try to help support her family to migrate to America. So my uncle Orlando was the first one they petitioned, and he came. And then my mom petitioned my grandparents. Then my grandparents came. And then we were able to petition 10 years later, I think in 2017, in 2015-ish, we petitioned the whole family. So we petitioned 2 of my uncles, 2 of my aunts. One of my aunt has a daughter. She came, and then one of my uncle has his family, and they all came. So there's about 16 family members that all came to America from my mom and my dad, basically helping them to come. And they're all here now. There's no one left, like immediate family. Everyone's here now in America. My husband and I petitioned, helped my mom petition, because you have to, one person can't petition 16 people, so everybody in the family that was already established was able to petition 1 or 2 people and a family member to help them all come to America.
We were all born here. I think, as we get older, we realize it was much different. Like, when we would do bad things, we would be punished severely. It was very strict when my parents were around, it's very different back home. They believe in certain ways of punishment where that's not acceptable anymore in a sense, but they were very strict, very strict.
So I was very successful. I worked in the cleaning company, wash floors. Then I changed to shoe factory, and was a good. I have to work a lot because I have to pick up those shoes to put in the some type of the they call track. So I put my orders. I bring it to the lady, to the checker. Gonna check if I get everything all right. Then they send to shipping room to send shoes to the customer. Then after that, I work for myself, self-employed. I used to be a relating contractor for another 6 or 7 years.
When I was growing up, I was always afraid, to call out or say I can't do something, because, immigrant families, when you say you can't do something or say calling out of work, it's almost like, it's the only way I can put it, it's like a sin almost. And it makes you feel real bad. For a long time, even now, I'm 37 years old, I still have a hard time calling out, even when I'm sick, to call out, because I feel so bad all the time. And they kind of like, implant that in you, in a sense, like, like you're gonna lose your job, you're gonna do that, you can't, but I'm sick. Even till this day, I told my mom I called out today, and she'll say to me, "Oh, aren't you afraid you're gonna lose your job?" And now when I think about it, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm sick, I gotta call out. And then, those are the ways they change, in the sense, but they instill like hard work in you, really hard. And I still have that. That didn't change, but I try to enjoy life a little bit more. They never enjoy life. We never went on vacations. I like to go on vacations at least once a year. I like to do family activities, which we never did family activities whatsoever. Didn't exist. We used to have one vacation that was Canopy Lake Park after it was like in July after school was over, but that's it. But as a kid, it's like the best time ever.
Because I'm the first generation Cape Verdean American, and my cousins, Jayla, my daughter, and my son are second generations, and my cousins and my extended family are all living here in America. Now they have kids of their own and are U.S. citizen, and are all stable in their own homes. So we went from them all being back home in Cape Verde, to now all of them, they're all here. They own their own home. They all work. I have a cousin who's went to college, and she's studying to become in the criminal justice, and works really hard. I have others that are teachers. In my family, I have generations of teachers. So I do consider our family, the immigration process, a success, because we went from living in Cape Verde, to now having third generations living here.
Well, I have that desire to get life better. For I have my daughter, first daughter, so second is my son. I have three sons. One, my daughter he born 1979. Then my second is name is Alberto, so we have the same name. Then he was born 1980. Then my third son born 1981. Yeah. Then my last son is born in 1986. I was just quite busy, so my life was very busy. I couldn't take time for vacation. Then now I'm retired. I can enjoy a little bit myself and wait until God knows what's next. I don't know what's next. Could be good, could be bad, but I try to see if I can keep that way for the rest of the family and try to keep my legacy going. If I die, I want my daughter, my granddaughter, and I have a big family. so always they can pick up for me, see to learn from me. Then they keep in good life, and I'll give them some advice, because you find some negative people.
Yeah, I mean, as a family, we've got married, and we have two wonderful children. We have a little dog, Roxy, over here. We have our house. We have our daughter who's about to go to college, which is great. It's something I didn't really even think of growing up. So my family has been here for over 3 generations, and it's sometimes takes a little longer for different families, I would say. For Maria's family, she has doctors in her family. She has many with master's degrees. She has a master's degree herself. So I know one person in my family that has a master's degree. I also have a small family, or that I do know of. So that's our wonderful American dream right there, because we have our dog barking at the mailman. I mean, you can't get that back in the old countries when trying to pursue your American dream. I would say we contributed to this melting pot, right?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, I didn't even know what Mom looked like before we met, and we talked and we got to know each other, and we built this life together. And the goal was the next generation to make it better.
Better for them.
And that's what all I think immigrants try to do when they come here, to live the American dream. I hope it still exists for them. And you know, it's definitely worked for us, right? Yeah.
My mom came with a suitcase. My dad came over with a suitcase. No education over here. No nothing, you know. They got together. They had 4 kids. My mom and dad had 4 houses. They had all their cars paid off, you know. And the house they live in, oh, I'm sorry, they had 5 houses. I apologize. They had 5 houses, the one they live in now. And they ended up, you know, I call them the king of the neighborhood because they're probably the only ones that had their house paid off. You know, and I'll be here at this house for another 25 and only have 1 house, you know. It's a lot. You know, I have 1 daughter now, they had 4. And I never saw the stress from them. That's one thing I learned, like, they never showed when times was hard or times was, you know, really, really bad, which there were times it was really bad, you know, but I think it is a success, you know. The American dream is to come to America, buy your house, make sure your kids are all good, healthy, everyone's healthy, no one's ever passed away, none of my brothers and sisters, thank God, you know. I think it was a success.
Well, I'm retired, 66 and a half. Now I go the senior place, so I can do that exercise and keep myself busy. So, but I'm not agree with this life because we have nothing to do. So it makes you get old so quick. I wanna exercise. I be myself in good shape. I go to Cape Verde Island. The first time was after 40 years I've been in this country. Then I go to my first trip to my country was 2021. Then I have in mind to go another times. This July 11, I going to go again.
And a beautiful, and a bom life, bom vida. Com minha família, com meu marido, com minha filho. Está ok. Mas ainda na minha vida direito, ainda a Cabo Verde, ainda na 2018, ainda na 78 para Cabo Verde, ainda na 2018, ainda 2021, que foi na Deus, estou na 2024. Julho 11 de 2024, na Esperança, mas estou na minha terra. Eu com meu marido, com minha irmã.
This country, they say if you work hard, then you get see the results. So, but that's what I have to say. So we do I do a lot of work. I live in Cape Verde Island. They call Fogo. New folk Cape Verde, so I fixed my father's houses. I bring the car over there so I can ride my grandchildren, my great grandson. So
you want to share the memories with them.
Yeah, share the memory.
The memories that you grew up with.
So
with your grandkids.
Yeah, so build a road because we don't have a road. So I have to build a road to the house because it's about half a mile. It's far from the road is so. But the road, if I get to the house, I had to pay all by myself. And my father too helped me out with those constructions. So it was. But is all the work has been done, so I have everything to be completed. I'm very happy. So
Yeah, you're gonna go back in July to go enjoy it.
yeah, go back to enjoy those works.
That's good, Dad. Good job.
Well, my life now is definitely different than what it would have been if I stayed there. I think it would have been much, much different. And to be honest, sometimes I think about what would have happened if I stayed there and things like going to the army. Because I don't think I'm built for that. Like, I am already like an anxious person that worries about everything, so I can't see myself in that situation. But who knows? Maybe it would have, made me stronger or something. But I think that my life is definitely changed a lot since I moved, and is different in a good way. Like, I met my husband, and I had my daughter, and so many friends and family and everything. So thinking about what if we didn't move makes me sad, because then I wouldn't have the life I have now. I think my parents, my mom really, who pushed us to move, she did us a great service. And I think our life here is really, really good. So I think it is a success.
Tudo minha família está ali.
É bom que foi posto.
Minha postulin, dois trabalhos, mas tudo minha família ali. E minha tio que põe ali fran, para pôr tudo minha família ali, se ele morrer para ajudar minha família. Que se diz, que minha desejo também.